حي على الفلاح.
الحمد لله الذي أرسل رسوله بالهدى ودين الحق ليظهره على الدين كله، وكفى بالله شهيدا، وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له، وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله صلى الله عليه وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. أما بعد. As to what proceeds, after praising Allah the Most High, separated from His creation in a manner which befits His Majesty, with love and veneration exclusively for Him, and then requesting He the Most High to send His salah and salam upon our final Prophet and Messenger, Khatamul Anbiya wal Mursaleen, Muhammad ibn Abdullah al-Qurashi, alayhi salatu wassalam. We meet once again to study the subject known as Tadwīn-As-Sunnah, documentation of the Sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam. And currently we are studying about the books that were documented, books of Hadīth that were documented in the 3rd century. We have completed Sahih al-Bukhari and Sahih Muslim. And today our discussion will be about the Sunan of Imām Abu Dawūd as-Sijistani. Firstly, who is Imām Abu Dawūd? So Abu Dawūd is Sulaiman ibn al-Ash'ath bin Ishaq bin Bashir bin Shidad al-Uzdi as-Sijistani. He is known as the Imam Sheikh Sunnah, مقدم الحفاظ، محدث البصرة. These are some of the titles that he was known as. He was born in the year 202 after Hijrah and died in the year 275 after Hijrah. So that was the first issue, the name of the author and who was the author. The second issue is with regards to his book, Sunan Abi Dawud, the name of his book. He became well known among the scholars as As-Sunan. And it appears that the author, Imām Abu Dawūd, himself entitled it with his name, with this name, when he said in his risala or his letter to the people of Makkah. So Imām Abu Dawūd rahimahullah has authored a risala or a letter that he addressed to the people of Makkah when they questioned him on some issues. A student of knowledge should try to obtain that risala, because in there he talks about his book, Sunan, which is famously known as Sunan Abu Dawud. So he said to the people of Makkah that you have asked that I mention to you all the ahadith which are in the book of Sunan. Are they the most authentic, asah, that I know in this bab or on this issue. He mentioned in another place in his Risala, or his letter to the people of Makkah once again, where he said, and there are hadith that are in my book, As-Sunnah, that which are not muttasil, meaning connected. The chain of transmission is not connected. Instead, they are mursal, meaning that the chain of transmission goes back to a tabi'i and not a sahabi, radiyallahu anhu, or either goes back to a sahabi or a tabi'i, in general a tabi'i, without going back to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So again, he mentioned as-sunan, as-sunan. So he seems that he has called his own book as-sunan. So this was with regards to the name of his book, famously known as as-sunan. The third issue now that we will move on to is the methodology of Imām Abu Dawūd in his book As-Sunnah. In his letter to the people of Makkah, he said, "You have asked me to mention the hadith that are in the book As-Sunnah, and whether they are the most authentic that I know of in this chapter or on this issue. Know that this is the case, unless they have been narrated from two authentic sources, one of which has a stronger chain of transmission and the other has a better memory. Sometimes I may have written the hadith from the one with a better memory. However, I do not see in my book more than 10 hadith like this. I have only included one or two hadith in a chapter. If they are authentic hadith in a chapter in a bab, they are numerous, but I aim for the benefit of proximity. When I repeat a hadith in a bab from two or three sources, it is an addition to the wording, and sometimes it may include an extra word or slight change from the original hadith. Sometimes I summarize or condense a long hadith because if I were to write it in full, some listeners might not grasp its meaning or understand the legal point or the jurisprudent point within it. So I have shortened it for clarity. And then he goes on to say, there is nothing in the book of As-Sunan that I have compiled that comes from a person whose narrations are rejected. So absolutely, there is not a single narrator, according to Imām Abu Dawūd in his book, whose hadith are rejected. And if a hadith in it is weak, I have clarified that it is weak. And no other hadith of the same kind appears in that bab or in that chapter. For the hadith in my book that have severe weakness, I have pointed that out. Some of them have weak chains of transmission, but anything I have not mentioned in this regard is acceptable. And some are more authentic than others. So this is what he said. So, وَلَمْ أَذْكُرْ فِيهِ شَيْئًا فَهُوَ الصَّالِحُ وَبَعْضُهُ أَصَحُّ مِنْ بَعْضٍ. So anything that Imām Abu Dawūd rahimahullah in his Sunan Abi Dawud or in his Sunan remains silent about, and according to what he has said, is acceptable. So this is what he said with regards to his methodology, that how he organized his book and compiled his book. That sometimes when he will bring the most authentic narrations or a hadith that can be found with regards to that Bible chapter. Sometimes he narrates from two sources, and the reason why that he does that is that one chain of transmission is stronger than the other. So that's why he will narrate the same hadith from two different sources. Or sometimes there may be a narrator whose memory is better, so he will want to narrate that with that chain of transmission. But he says that this is quite rare. You'll only find about 10 hadith of Rasulullah like this. And he's only done that in 1 or 2 hadith in a chapter. And sometimes, if the hadith in a particular bab are numerous, he aims for the benefit of proximity. One of the reasons of why he repeats a hadith in a chapter from different sources is because there may be a slight different wording, an extra wording from the original hadith. So that's why he does that. He also summarizes long hadith. And the reason why he does that, he says, is that because many of the people may not understand the wajhul istishhad or the legal point or the ruling that is derived from that hadith, if he was to just narrate it or transmit it in a long manner. So he shortens those such narrations for clarity. The entire book is free from a narrator whose narrations have been rejected. Also, if this hadith is weak, he points it out. And he won't, no other hadith of the same kind appears in that same chapter. So whenever he brings a weak narration, it is for the reason to point it out. And anything that he remains silent about and doesn't comment about, just narrates the hadith, then according to him, that hadith is accepted. And then he says some of such narrations where he remains silent about, some are more authentic than others. Well, so this was basically, somebody's asking a question. Let's see what the question is. So basically, the 10 narrations. Question just to ask what about these 10 narrations. So he says that sometimes what he does is that he narrates a hadith from 2 or 3 different sources. The reason why he does that is that one source is more stronger than the other in terms of the narrator may having memory or being more, you can say, efficient or being more precise. And he says, but this is very rare. You'll only find about 10 narrations of that nature. This is what he's trying to say. Is that clear? Yeah, Shafa? This is what he said when he said about the 10 narrations. Well, so he's just saying that the reason that I do that is sometimes I may find 2 different chains of transmission, and I'll bring both of them. Both are authentic. But why? Why do I do that? Because I know that in one chain, the narrator, his memory is stronger than the other chain. So I just bring that to point that out. That look, I have 2 chains. This is both authentic, but one is more stronger than the other. واضح؟ So far of his methodology. Students with me or following me? So let's mention some of the brief things. We know now, if somebody was to ask us that, why did Abu Dawud bring weak narrations in his Sunan? Why are there weak hadith in Sunan Abu Dawud? So he said that he brought them to point them out. Yes, so just because somebody has a weak narrations in his book, that doesn't necessarily mean that he agrees with those weak narrations. Well, so now we move on to the conditions of Imām Abu Dawud in his Sunnah. The scholar Hafiz Abu Fadl Muhammad bin Tahir said, as for Abu Dawud and those who came after him, their books are divided into three categories. So when you pick up Sunan Abi Dawud, the ahadith that can be found in Sunan Abi Dawud are of three categories. The first is Sahih, those ahadith which are Sahih. This is similar to what is found in the two Sahih books, Sahih al-Bukhari and Sahih Muslim. Number two, Sahih according to their own criteria. So Imam Abu Dawud, he has his own criteria. So a hadith will be declared to be Sahih by him based upon his own criteria. Abu Abdullah ibn Munda mentioned that the condition of Abu Dawud and An-Nasa'i in their selections of hadith was to exclude narrators from people who were not unanimously agreed upon to be rejected, providing the hadith had an unbroken chain of transmission with no interruption or discontinuity. So they would narrate from such narrators or transmitters who are not unanimously agreed upon to be rejected. So you may find narrators where some people, some scholars may have declared them to be those whose ahadith are rejected, but there was no unanimous agreement upon that. So you may find Abu Dawud and An-Nasa'i transmitting the hadith. Third is hadith they included for the sake of contradiction or for the sake of addressing opposing views in the previous chapter. They were presented not necessarily because they believed them to be authentic, but they may have explained their weakness in a way that knowledgeable people could understand. So that's the third. It is asked why they included these ahadith in their books despite not considering them authentic. The answer can be given in three ways. So, after knowing the three different categories, as mentioned by Ibn Tahir, Abu Fadl Ibn Tahir, a lot of people, when they want to justify using hadith, they'll give you the false argument and they'll say, you know what, but Abu Dawud narrated weak narrations in his Sunnah. At-Tirmidhī narrated weak narrations in his Sunnah. So, why did they narrate or translate weak narrations in the Sahih? Why did Abu Dawud do this? So the people of knowledge have given an answer. And they said there are three reasons why a scholar such as Imam Abu Dawud in his Sunan narrated narrations which are considered to be weak. The first is the narration by certain groups and their use of this hadith as evidence. They included them and explained their defects to clear any doubts. So then they narrated them, they translated them and included them in their collections, but they explained their defects, their errors, in order to alert the reader and clear any doubts. Number two, scholars or imams such as Abu Dawud, they did not require the strict criteria that Imam Al-Bukhari and Muslim used, such as explicitly labeling or verifying a hadith as sahih on the cover of their books. So they didn't say that they are going to bring everything in their book that is sahih because they had a different intent. The intentions were different. their intentions are to bring defective narrations or narrations which have been declared to be weak in order to clarify the weakness that can be found in such narrations, to critique them. Number three, this approach is similar to that of the fuqaha, the jurists, and other scholars who present the arguments of their opponents in their books, knowing that these arguments are not valid evidence. So they bring these such narrations to the arguments of their opponents and then critique them, just like you find in the books of fiqh. This practice is done as part of scholarly methodology, similar to what we find the fuqaha do in their books. So these are the three main reasons of why we find that Imām Abu Dawūd rahimahullah ta'ala narrated such narrations which were considered to be weak. Is that clear so far? Somebody was to ask us, why can we find weak narrations in Sunan Abu Dawud? Why did Imam Abu Dawud al-Sijistani bring such narrations? We know that his methodology, Al-Bukhari's methodology and Muslim's methodology were different. He didn't say that everything he was going to bring is sahih, because he had a different approach when it came to such a hadith. Is that clear so far? Are the students with me? Are the students with me so far? The next issue that we need to discuss, which has been a discussion for over centuries, that ما سكت عنه أبو داود. Remember, he mentioned that everything I remain silent about in my book, I don't comment. So if there's a narration I bring or transmit in my sunan, and I remain silent about it, then it is acceptable. But the scholars, when they analyzed this statement of Abu Dawud, ما سكت عنه وهو صالح للاحتجاج, they say, it's acceptable. What did Abu Dawud mean when he said, if I remain silent about the narration? If you were to read now Sunan Abu Dawud and you didn't see Imam Abu Dawud commenting that this narration is weak or has any defect or a hidden defect, made no criticism or no comment on it, but according to what he said to the people of Makkah when he wrote to them, then that narration is acceptable. It can be used and utilized as proof and evidence. Well, the scholars have disputed what he meant when he made that statement. So we have the great scholar Ibn Salah. He said, what we found mentioned in Abu Dawud's book, but not in either of the two Sahihs, and no one has explicitly stated its authenticity, including those who distinguish between Sahih and Hasan. We know that that is considered Hasan by Abu Dawud. However, it may be considered not Hasan by others. So this is what Ibn Salah said. He said, if you found a narration, a hadith, in the Sunan of Abu Dawud, but we didn't find it in Al-Bukhari and Muslim, nor did we find that any of the scholars explicitly have verified or declared that narration to be authentic, including those scholars who distinguish between the two categories of hadith, Sahih and Hasan, then we know that that narration will be considered or verified as being Hasan, hadithun Hasan, according to Abu Dawud. But it may not be considered Hasan by others. So according, it will be considered Hasan maybe only to Abu Dawud. Al-Hafidh al-Iraqi, another scholar, says that when Abu Dawud said that it is acceptable could mean it is authentic, Sahih, or it could mean it is Hasan, good. According to those who consider a Hasan hadith as a stage or as a ranking between Sahih and weak. It has not been transmitted to us whether Abu Dawud himself viewed what is not weak as authentic. So there's nothing. So if Abu Dawud did not view something to be weak, he will remain silent. We can't. He says that it hasn't been transmitted to us whether Abu Dawud considered that to be Sahih. Therefore, it would be more accurate to not elevate what he was silent about to the level of Sahih, unless it is known that his opinion aligns with the second view, which requires further transmission. So, Al-Iraqi is saying, if you find a hadith which Abu Dawud remained silent about, then if you want to call it Sahih, but don't equate it with the Sahih of Imam al-Bukhari and Imam Muslim. Then we have, you can say, Ibn Hajar. Ibn Hajar said, from this, it becomes clear that everything Abu Dawud remained silent about, sakata anhu, does not fall under the category of Hasan, as defined by scholars. But just because Abu Dawud remained silent about hadith, it doesn't necessarily mean that it will always be considered to be Hasan or Sahih. Instead, it can be divided into categories. One is found in the two Sahihs of Al-Bukhari and Muslim or meets the conditions of Sahih. What is considered Hasan by himself, by itself, or what is considered Hasan if supported by other evidence. These two categories are very common in his book. Either what he considered Hasan himself, or what is considered to be Hasan by other supported narrations. What is weak but narrated by someone whose narrations are not unanimously rejected. So narration may be weak, but by someone whose narrations are not unanimously rejected. All of these categories are acceptable for use as evidence by Abu Dawud. So you consider all of these four as evidence. Rather, is that clear? Is that An-Nawawi rahimahullah, he said the truth is that what we find in his Sunan, which he did not clarify, and on which no one has explicitly stated its authenticity or good status, its sihh, then that hadith is Hasan. If someone has stated that it is weak, or if a knowledgeable person identifies a weakness in its chain of transmission, then it is ruled weak, and Abu Dawud's silence on the matter is not considered. Ibn Hajar, after he read this statement of Nawawi, said this is the correct position. And this is what seems to be, you can say, very precise. So a hadith which we find in his Sunan, which he did not clarify, on which has no one has explicitly stated its authenticity and status, then the hadith is Hasan. So we find a hadith in Sunan Abu Dawud, and Abu Dawud remains silent about, and nobody from the scholars has explicitly said that it is Sahih, they will consider that hadith to be Hasan. If somebody from amongst the scholars has stated that there is weakness in that narration, or weakness in a chain of transmission, then it will be ruled as being weak, and Abu Dawud's silence on this matter will not be considered. واضح? So this is how we said that we deal with that which Imam Abu Dawud as-Sijistani remained silent in his Sunnah. The next issue with regards to Sunan Abi Dawud is that the inaya, or the importance or the care that the people of knowledge showed to this book. We find that scholars have paid great attention to this book, as they did with the other 6 major books of Hadith: Sahih al-Bukhari, Sahih Muslim, Sunan Tirmidhī, Sunan Nasa'i, Sunan Ibn Majah. However, the attention given to Abu Dawud's Sunan has surpassed that of the other Sunan, coming second only to the 2 Sahihs. So the ranking after Sahih al-Bukhari, Sahih Muslim, the third is Sunan Abi Dawud, especially among those who specialize in fiqh. So Sunan Abi Dawud is a great book of fiqh due to the wealth of authentic and good hadith it contains. Scholars have summarized it, added commentaries to it, and provided biographical details on its narrators, similar to how they did with the narrators in the 6 books of hadith. So the most important commentaries on Sunan Abi Dawud we find is Ma'alim al-Sunan by Abu Sulaiman Hamd ibn Muhammad ibn Ibrahim al-Khattabi, who died in the year 388 after Hijrah. He wrote a explanation to Sunan Abi Dawud. Milqat al-Su'ud ila Sunan Abi Dawud. This is the second one, by Jalaluddin al-Suyuti, who died in the year 911 after Hijrah. Then we have Fath al-Wudud ala Sunan Abi Dawud by Abu al-Hasan Muhammad ibn Abdul Hadi as-Sindhi, who died in the year 1139 after Hijrah. Then we have the famous explanation of Sunan Abi Dawud, and one of the best out there is Awnul Ma'bud, the Sharh Sunan Abi Dawud by the noble Ahlul Hadith Sheikh known as Sharf al-Haq al-Adim Abadi, who died in the year 1326 after Hijrah. Then you have a Deobandi explanation that was written in opposition to it, known as Badr al-Majhud في حل أبي داود by Khalil Ahmad Sahranpuri in 1346 after Hijrah. So these are some of the explanations or commentaries that have been written on Sunan Abi Dawud. Any questions before we move on? So with that, we've understood some important information on Sunan Abi Dawud. And if the issue of Sunan Abi Dawud is clear, we know that when now he remains silent, what the scholars think of such a narration, or when Abu Dawud remains silent. The statement of Nawawi, the last statement, seems to be more feasible, as concurred by Ibn Hajar al-Asqalani rahimahullah ta'ala. Any questions before we move on? So now you know that why there are weak narrations in Sunan Abi Dawud, and also if you find a narration which Abu Dawud remains silent about, how to understand that narration. واضح. So in khulasa, or in conclusion, one of the main books of fiqh for the people of hadith, the Ahlul Hadith, is Sunan Abi Dawud. They hold this book in high prestige, and this is one of the main books of fiqh that they refer to, Sunan Abu Dawud. So you keep that as a note. People say, what are the books of fiqh of the Ahl al-Hadith? Then we say that the first one is Sunan Abu Dawud, or As-Sunan, as Abu Dawud said about his book. Now, any questions? Before we move on to At-Tirmidhī's book, just famously known as Sunan At-Tirmidhī. If we're clear, then we can move on, inshallah. So we need to complete all 6 books to complete this century before we move on. So that will definitely, inshallah, be done in our program. Will you start to have your final exam? We will finish all 6 books, and by this, inshallah, we will come to the next chapter, bi'idhnillahi ta'ala, which will be documentation of the Sunnah in the 4th century. Now, as I said, but the difference between Sahih al-Bukhari and Sahih Muslim and Sunan Abi Dawud is that Sunan Abi Dawud is just a book dealing with the issues of fiqh, whereas Sahih al-Bukhari and Sahih Muslim also are books of fiqh, but they deal with other issues. Is that clear? So Sunan Abi Dawud is just a book of fiqh. Just like when you have a book of fiqh, but Bukhari and Muslim are also books of fiqh, but they discuss other issues as well. Now, so we'll move on to the next one, next book, which is Al-Jami' or Jami' Abi Isa At-Tirmidhī. First is, who is this? Who is the author of this book, famously known as Sunan At-Tirmidhī? He is Abu Isa Muhammad ibn Isa ibn Sawra ibn Musa ibn Dahhak At-Tirmidhī. He is known as the Hafiz Sahib al-Tasanif Kathir al-Tasanif al-Kathira, the author of many books. Imām Al-Dhahabi rahimahullah, he said that At-Tirmidhī was born in the year 209 and died in the year 279. And that At-Tirmidhī rahimahullah, when he reached an age, when he aged, he really set out to travel, to seek knowledge of Hadīth and to write it down. The name of the book, so there's a big dispute of exactly what is the name of his book. Abdul Rahman Mubarakpuri rahimahullah mentions in his Muqaddimah known as Tuhfatul Ahwadhi, and I say that the Muqaddimah of Tuhfatul Ahwadhi is a very important Muqaddimah when it comes to At-Tirmidhī's book. So the sharh that Mubarakpuri wrote is known as Tuhfatul Ahwadhi, and Tuhfatul Ahwadhi has a sharh as a Muqaddim. Mubarakpuri mentions that the person who wrote Kashf al-Dhunun, which is like a bibliography of books, said that the Jami of At-Tirmidhī became well known in relation to its author. So his book was directly ascribed to him. So some used to call Tirmidhi's book Jami At-Tirmidhī. Al-Hakim and Al-Khatib called it Al-Jami As-Sahih. So Al-Khatib Al-Baghdadi and Al-Imam Hakim An-Nisaburi, they called it Al-Jami As-Sahih. Not that every single narration in Tirmidhi's book is authentic, but mostly, you can say, most of the narrations that can be found in Sunan At-Tirmidhi, in the book of At-Tirmidhi, are considered to be authentic. And also another name that it was given is At-Tirmidhi, Sunan At-Tirmidhi. A famous name that it was given is Sunan At-Tirmidhi. It's not clear with regards to its name. Some also call it Al-Jami al-Kabir. That's another name that it's given as well. طيب. The rank of Jami al-Tirmidhi among the 6 books of Hadith. Imam At-Tirmidhi himself said, I compiled this book and presented it to the scholars of Hijaz, and they were pleased with it. I presented it to the scholars of Iraq, and they were pleased with it. I presented it to the scholars of Khurasan, and they were pleased with it. Whoever has this book in their home, it is as if they have a prophet speaking in their house. This is what he said. So this is the importance of this book. This is what At-Tirmidhi said. Well, is that clear? So we can see the importance. The author of Kashf al-Dhunun, Haji Khalifa, who is a bibliographer, said that the Sunan al-Sahih of Abu Isa At-Tirmidhi, in his opinion, is ranked as the 3rd among the 6 books of Hadith. Meaning after Bukhari and Muslim, he feels that Tirmidhi should be the 3rd. Al-Dhahabi said, the rank of Jami al-Tirmidhi is lower than that of Sunan Abu Dawūd and Sunan al-Nasai due to the inclusion of the hadith of Al-Kalbi and other narrators similar to him, due to the fact that At-Tirmidhi accepted the narrations of Al-Kalbi, Al-Maslub and Al-Kalbi and their likes. So there's 2 narrators that are very problematic due to At-Tirmidhi narrating from them. Why did he narrate it? Why did he narrate from such 2 narrators? That is a different discussion. But due to that, Al-Dhahabi says that the rank of At-Tirmidhi was put down due to this reason. We find that the Abdurrahman Mubarakpuri in Tuhfa, in his explanation of Sunan Abi Dawud Tuhfat al-Ahwad, he says, it is understood from the, say, the keys of Tahdhib al-Kamal, Tahdhib al-Tahdhib and Taqrib, and Tadhkirat al-Huffaz. These are all books of different scholars with regards to the 6 books of Hadith. That the rank of Jami al-Tirmidhi is after Sunan Abi Dawud and before Sunan al-Nasai. So At-Tuhfa also, Abu Mubarakpuri also agreed that the ranking of Sunan of Jami al-Tirmidhi amongst the 6 books of Hadith should be that it should be number 3 after Bukhari and Muslim, just like Haji Khalifa of Kashf al-Dhunun. But that which is normally accepted by most and the majority of the scholars is that it comes after Sunan Abi Dawud. Or is that clear? There is. So whether At-Tirmidhi is 3rd or 4th, some hold it to be 3rd, some hold it to be 4th. That which is the most popular position is that it's accepted to be ranked as number 4. But some scholars like Mubarakpuri, Abdurrahman Mubarakpuri and others, they say that it should be ranked as number 3. The next issue is the methodology of At-Tirmidhi in his Jami. What is the methodology of Tirmidhi in his Jami? So Abu Isa At-Tirmidhi, Abu Isa according to abwab, according to chapters, following the method of comprehensive collections of rulings and other topics. It's a jami. It's not only to do with uh, issues of fiqh, but other than that. Each bab in At-Tirmidhi's Jami is titled according to the specific issue or ruling for which he narrated the hadith. So he himself gave these chapter headings, and in such he includes one or more hadith in each chapter, followed by the opinions of jurists, fuqaha, on the issue. So this is something new. Abu Dawud didn't do that, but At-Tirmidhi made sure he did that. So after mentioning all the ahadith in that bab or in that chapter, then he will bring you the opinions of the fuqaha on this issue, including their assessment of the hadith as sahih or hasan or da'if. So he'll say that this hadith, so and so faqih used to act upon it, this was his position and this was his position. So he discusses the strength of the chain of narration, it is not the reliability of the narrators, and any potential flaws or defects apparent or hidden in the chain. He also mentions the different versions of the hadith, and if there are other relevant hadith that align with the chapter. So you'll find that he will usually say, he refers to them saying, وَفِي الْبَابِ and fulan وَفُلَان من الصحابة, and in this chapter from so and so and so and so, and from the companions. واضح, is that clear so far? So this is how he has done it. So something that differentiates At-Tirmidhī from As-Sunnah of Abu Dawud is that he brings the opinions and the positions of many of the scholars, and then at times he critiques such positions. So just because he brings a position of a scholar in his book, that doesn't mean that he agrees with him. He'll say that this position was adopted by this scholar or by this jurist. And this is the stupidity of somebody who shows you and says, you know what, Tirmidhi mentioned that there is a scholar who had a position on this issue, this, and that. But that's Tirmidhi's method. Tirmidhi's methodology is to bring such positions, not that he agrees with those positions, not that every single opinion or position that he brings, he concurs with that position. He just brings them and tells you, look, on this issue, these are the hadith. After the verification of hadith, he say, well, you know what, this scholar took this position, this scholar took this position, and this scholar took this position. Well, so just because something was merely transmitted by At-Tirmidhi about a position doesn't mean that he agrees with that position himself. Well, now, so the next issue that we are going to discuss is the conditions of Abu Isa At-Tirmidhi in his book. Previously, it was discussed, part of this, in relation to the conditions of Bukhari and Abu Dawud. Here we add the statement of Abu al-Fadl ibn al-Tahir, who says, as for Abu Isa At-Tirmidhi, his book can be divided into 4 categories. So Ibn al-Tahir mentions that At-Tirmidhi's book can be divided into 4 categories. Number 1 can be seen is Sahihun Maqtu'un bih, authentic and conclusive. This refers to those hadith that are in agreement with those that can be found in Sahih Bukhari, Sahih Muslim, meaning absolutely authentic. Number 2, according to the conditions of the 3, Bukhari, Abu Dawud, and Nasai, as explained earlier, the hadith that meet the criteria of Abu Dawud, At-Tirmidhi, and Nasai. Number 3, narrations included for the sake of pointing out contradictions. In these, he clarified their flaws and did not leave them unaddressed. So he mentioned such narrations. And the 4th category, in this category, he clarified by saying, I have included in my book only those ahadith that some of the scholars have acted upon. So this is a broad condition. So in his book, he has only included those narrations that were followed by some scholars. So he didn't bring anything that was not practiced upon. Is that clear? The next issue that we will move on to is with regards to the scholars showing great importance or attention to Jami' At-Tirmidhī. In Tuhfat al-Ahwadi, Abdul Rahman Mubarak Puri says, no, that Jami' At-Tirmidhī has commentaries, annotations, summaries, and extractions made from it. Scholars have paid great attention to it in terms of transmitting it, in terms of its narrations, transmission, and manuscript copies. They have also shown interest in the differences between its various copies from an early time. As for its narrators, they have been given special attention within the books that include biographical information on the narrators of the 6 major books of Hadith. So this can show you the ulama have given a lot of attention, have paid great attention in terms of transmitting the Hadith and transcribing it from manuscripts. So there was a copy, a very old copy of Jami' At-Tirmidhī in India, in Gujarat, in a library in Ahmedabad. So I tried to go and view that copy, that manuscript, an old manuscript of this manuscript of Jami' At-Tirmidhī. One second. So the library's name is Pir Muhammad Shah Library in Ahmedabad. When I got there, we tried to search for this manuscript. We found all the books. I had the shelf number, but this book, this manuscript, we could not find. So I traveled about, you can say, almost 2,000 kilometers just to view this manuscript. قدر الله ما شاء فعل. The manuscript was not there, and I was told that it has been stolen. So I can show you that a old ancient manuscript of Jami' At-Tirmidhī is supposedly to have been preserved in Pir Muhammad Shah's library in Ahmedabad in Gujarat, India. So this shows you can say, the importance of At-Tirmidhī, that a lot of work has been done with regards to its manuscripts that can be found. The next issue that is under discussion is the most important commentaries or explanations of Jami' At-Tirmidhī. We have an explanation known as Aridatul Ahwadi. Aridatul Ahwadi by Abu Bakr ibn al-Arabi al-Maliki. The second is the Shar of Ibn Sayyid al-Nas, which he did not complete, which was completed by Al-Hafidh al-Iraqi, who died in the year 806. But even he did not complete it, and then finally it was completed by his son Abu Zur'a, who died in the year 826 after Hijrah. Then we have the Shar of Al-Hafidh Abu al-Faraj Abdul Rahman ibn Ahmad bin Muhammad, known as Ibn Rajab al-Hanbali, 895. And then we have Tuhfatul Ahwadi by Abdul Rahman al-Mubarak Furi in Arabic and Mubarak Puri in Urdu, the Urdu language. So these are, you can say, 4 main explanations of Sunan You can say At-Tirmidhī or Jami At-Tirmidhī. Now, any question? And, so we will have one more lesson and we will finish Nasai and Ibn Majah bi'idhnillahi ta'ala, and by this we will have completed the 3rd century. And we'll move on to the 4th century bi'idhnillahi ta'ala. Any questions with regards to? So now, alhamdulillah, we have an idea. So these 2 books, before we conclude today's lesson, are considered to be the main major references of fiqh for the Ahl al-Hadith. Sunan Jami At-Tirmidhī and Sunan Abu Dawūd. We know some differences between Abu Dawūd and At-Tirmidhī. We know that At-Tirmidhī brings the opinions and the positions of the fuqaha, and he does that all the time, whereas Abu Dawud does not do so. But all of them bring weak narrations in their collections to point out the defects and the weaknesses that can be found. Well, so today we have known that why weak narrations can be found in the books of Hadith. It's stupidity for somebody to say that in Fadail al-A'mal we have weak narrations just because there is weak narrations that can be found in Sunan At-Tirmidhī or Sunan Abu Dawud. Can you see that flawed argument? Do you think that that is now a valid argument just because Tirmidhī and Abu Dawud transmitted weak narrations in their collections, so did the author of Fadail al-A'mal, justifying that weak hadiths can be used in books? This is stupidity. Was there any questions? Are we clear on Sunan Abu Dawud and Sunan At-Tirmidhī? Because inshallah in our next lesson we'll complete the 3rd century. So this semester, alhamdulillah, we were able to complete the 3rd century of the Tadwīn-As-Sunnah. The question asks, could we mention the difference between now? One of the students asked the question. So Al-Jami is much more comprehensive. It deals with many more topics just than specific topics. For example, As-Sunan of Abu Dawud just deals with the issues of fiqh, whereas of At-Tirmidhī deals with topics of fiqh and other than fiqh. Well, that is a general thing. There is a general difference between Al-Jami and Sunan. Now, do we have examples of some identified in Abu Dawud's too? Now, so if you were to read on this, you will find certain narrators that Abu Dawud did take from with regards to, as we find of Al-Maslum and Al-Kalbi of At-Tirmidhī. Just how we mentioned the 2 weak narrators in At-Tirmidhī, do we know of some identified in Abu Dawud's too? Now, this you will be able to do. So can we repeat the 3rd and 4th categories of Tirmidhi's book? Now, so the 3rd, I think you're referring to this category, narrations that were included for the sake of highlighting the contradictions that can be found in narrations. In these, he clarified their flaws and did not leave them unaddressed. And the 4th category is, in this category, he clarified by saying, I have included in my book only those ahadith that some of the scholars have acted upon. This is a broad condition. Is this what you are referring to? So in his book, he has only included those narrations that have been acted upon. So if you found a narration that was acted upon, maybe he may have not inserted that narration. Now, Any more any more questions? Okay, so we'll stop here. So one more lesson left of Tadwīn-As-Sunnah for this semester, which is to conclude an النسائي and Ibn Majah بإذن الله تعالى. طيب. بارك الله فيكم وجزاكم. Inshallah we'll meet once again. بإذن الله تعالى when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wills us to do so. طيب. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.